Were there ever any engagements with any of the Albanian insurgents?
Yeah. There was one engagement that was pretty, it was it was the first time in my career in the military that I had bullets go past me and return some fire. And it was this time. So what happened was, on a normal everyday patrol, we encountered this dude walking down the road, and he had an Albanian guy, and he had like a military belt around his waist. So we stopped and asked him what's up, and the Russians asked him what's going on, and the Russians found him basically suspicious. Let's put it that way. So they ended up hauling him. A lot of the stuff I didn't see, and they hauled him back to their compound or whatever. And that guy apparently gave them some intel of there being like an encampment up along the border, like just right on top of where that DMZ is. Which, by the way, we weren't allowed to go in the DMZ by like the ROE up there, rules of engagement.
Did the Russians like turn the screws on this guy, and that's why he gave it up? Do you know?
I don't know. I didn't see it, but it's possible.
Probably.
It's possible. Yeah. And I also think that the Russians had Serbs with them, probably, at least collaborating with them, which, that would be like us going somewhere and the British were also there and we're going to collaborate. You got the Serbs and the Russians right there.
Yeah.
I'm sure they were talking. So, I don't know what happened. I'm speculating on that, but I'm just saying. So long story short, it was the Russians are like, we're rolling on this. We're going to go investigate this and see what's going on. So we jump in our Humvees. We got 2 Humvees, and then we got the Russian, I don't remember if it was a BTR or a BMP in trail, and we headed out for this thing, and we beelined up to this spot. And so we come rolling up through this, this is all super rural, woods and like rolling fields, kind of like think of like a pastoral view of like northern New England. That's kind of what it looks like in Kosovo. And there was this thin trail going up into the woodline, and that is basically where this place was that apparently this guy had like pointed out on the map to the Russians. And we head up there, and we stopped, I don't know, a couple 100 meters short of going in there because we weren't sure if it was in the buffer zone, because we weren't supposed to go in it. But based on our maps and what Russians said, apparently, I wasn't involved in that. My captain's down there speaking Russian. They're looking at maps and shit. And we decided we're gonna go. We can go a little further before we're in the buffer zone. So anyway, we headed up the hill and we come up over the rise. I was actually in the lead vehicle. I was behind a Mark 19, machine gun in the turret of our Humvee. My team sergeant was down in the. Was he driving? I think he was driving. And whatever. We roll up over the rise on this little dirt path, and there's a dude in camouflage. Like, you ever seen the Swiss camouflage? It's kind of got red blotches in it.
Yeah.
He's wearing that, and he's got a beret on his head, and he's holding an AK. Really young guy. He couldn't have been more than like 18 or 20 years old. And we came up over that rise, and his eyes got like this freaking big, and it was one of these UCPMB guys. He didn't do anything like to shoot at us or anything, but guy jumped out of my vehicle and basically grabbed that guy's weapon. There was this is almost humorous, even though it was kind of messed up, but there was a gate that they had put across the road, and with a sign on it where they had kind of crudely painted "Stop UCPMB," which I don't know if they were like taxing people or something when they go through there. I don't know, but my team sergeant, I think it was, basically ripped the sign off of that thing, and it was just like a little wooden thing across the road, like a little thing, and we moved that out of the way, and we drove up into this. We basically drove up into this little encampment. And when we went, basically it was like crossing from the edge of a field into the wood line when we went into this trail through that gate. And I was keyed up at that point. I'm like, holy shit, we're basically going into call it a base camp of these Albanian insurgent guys. It was totally against their like strategic interest to do anything bad to an American. But still, you never know. So we went in there, and now we're in like this super thick, almost like a hemlock evergreen like forest. I don't know if it was hemlock. I don't remember. It might have been spruce or something, but whatever. We go rolling in there, maybe only a couple 100 feet, if that. And at that point, I start seeing like there was a car like camouflaged into the trees, like deliberately camouflaged, and there was a tent with camouflage over it. And there were like these little spots where you could tell people were cooking food and camping out inside there. And I don't know, we were probably sitting there 30 seconds and somebody opened fire on us basically. And bullets flew like past me. I'm not trying to exaggerate it and make it out to be something huge, but somebody was firing, let's just say in our general direction through the wood line. So me being, who I am or whatever, I freaking returned fire with the Mark 19 into where I thought it was coming from. Meanwhile, and just before that happened, I forgot to mention, like when we first drove in, the Russians, the VDV guys, basically, they're, again, like talking to my captain in Russian, they basically became like a flanking element, and we kind of became like a supporting type element. Whether we did that deliberately or not, I don't know 100%, but that's kind of how it worked out. So the Russians flanked left while we kind of went in, let's just say straight, you know what I'm saying? And so fire broke out, and I returned fire with the Mark 19. Another guy on my team and a couple guys also kind of did a little bit of a spray. I don't think we fired for more than 15 seconds. And my captain called ceasefire, or my team sergeant did. And basically, man, the friggin' whole woods looked like it was smoking from the Mark 19, And I'm getting like keyed up thinking about it, man. It was intense. It was a little intense moment. It was. I actually am very careful not to exaggerate shit, man. Like, I'm not trying to be some kind of bullshit guy, but like, I was scared shitless, and like, because that's the first time I'd ever heard rounds like fired, But anyway, the Russians flanked. Fire went off. Ceasefire. And then the Russians start bringing dudes back. And then my team sergeant said, let's basically secure this place. So I jumped actually out of the turret down. I got down out of the turret and I grabbed a 240 machine gun that we kept inside the vehicle. And I went out kind of on the front perimeter of that kind of compound. It was literally an encampment, probably, I don't know, man, 150 feet by 150 feet. And I went out kind of to what I thought was the edge of it with the 240 and just kind of pulled security, as they say. And the Russians brought in a couple guys that they basically captured, these guys, and we ended up, team sergeant called us back in. We jumped in the vehicles and we hauled those guys back to the Russian compound.
Do you know if
it was intense.
If you guys killed any of their guys?
We don't. We wounded some, and I don't know who wounded who or whatever. But there were dudes. In fact, it was one of the things that kind of shocked me was seeing dudes bleeding that the Russians were bringing back in.
Yeah. Wow.
And like that was my first time doing that.
The old cherry pop.
Yeah, I guess you could say that.
Yeah.
Now, what's weird about it, though, man, is I have a tendency to think that I have a feeling that whoever was firing at us didn't realize we were Americans.
Right.
I think that is, in hindsight, you know what I'm saying?
Which is understandable because there's only a few of you, right?
Yeah, and there was a Russian vehicle right there, so maybe they saw the Russian vehicle, and maybe Russians and Serbs have similar vehicles, and maybe that's why they fired. I've been thinking about this for 30 years, man, 25 years. This was 2001. And I'm like, why did they fire?
Yeah.
You know, I'm always wondering. I overthink stuff too much, man.
Yeah.
It's the philosophy shit, probably.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
anyway, that went down. It was intense. I think about that day all the time, man. And you know how it got to be that. Oh, one other thing, man, that was part of my response when why I returned fire and why I was scared shitless was. About a month before, one of the Russians was actually killed on a patrol where they weren't with us. They were just on their own. And if you Googled it, I think you could probably find it from the old news back then where a Russian was killed on a patrol in Kosovo. And so in my mind, in our team's mind, we were like, these guys might go after us. You know, they went after the Russians. If we're with the Russians, we could be... You know, we kind of upped our threat posture, let's put it that way, after that happened. So I was keyed up just going in there at that moment. I'm like, a Russian got popped in the head and killed. And I remember the Russians carrying him to the helicopter that night when we evac'd the guy. That was a big deal too, man.
Yeah.
Russian gets killed. We spun up and went out to help him get air support. And we ended up having a Black Hawk come in and evac their guy.
Wow.
It was dead, man. Like they were carrying him to the I'll never forget it, man. Carrying him to the chopper. Just his friggin' half his head was missing on the back of his head.
Wow.
And like, but later on, like we learned that might have been like some kind of accidental discharge or even possibly like a suicide. And it wasn't what we thought it was.
Wow.
So yeah, man, there was some dynamics like that that are